Thanks for tuning in to our seller interview series. Up today, we've got a dropshipping business for sale in the pet care niche. Created in August 2014, this business makes an average of $8,955 per month in net profit, and the listing number for this business is 46504. Now, we do these interviews to give potential buyers more information about both the seller and the asset they're looking to purchase. We hope these insights are helpful for you in making a buying decision. We've got the seller with us today to go through the business and cover everything from niche selection to traffic and monetization. Thanks for coming on, Nicholas.
Hi, thank you.
We're going to do a quick summary before we get started with the interview. So first off, this business was built in August 2014. This business has monthly revenue of $111,118 and is producing an average net profit of $8,955, and that's based on a 12-month average. Included in the sale of the business are domain and all site content and files, second branded domain, Shopify account, email list, social media accounts, supplier relationships, and a USPTO trademark filing. Now that we're through with the quick summary, let's go ahead and get started with the interview. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Sure. About 10 years ago, I started working in internet in general, mainly on the corporate side with a few gigs in startup consulting. And starting last year, I raised a small fund and decided to basically buy Empire Flippers websites, dropshipping, affiliate, etc., and build a small portfolio, basically to do for myself what I've been doing in the corporate world. Then a few professional opportunities have started coming up to go back to the corporate world, which I cannot turn down. So I'm looking to divest the portfolio. This was the first business I bought, this dropshipping store. It's been good, but I just will not be able to hang on to it.
Yeah, and that's all good reasoning. You actually are answering one of the questions that I have for you down the road, so it's good. Starting on some of the details early. No, it's great. So, maybe this is a bit repetitive, but, how did you come up with the idea to start with this particular business?
I actually bought this in December of last year, so we're coming up on about a year. I liked the business when I first saw it as an entry as a first-time buyer in e-commerce and in dropshipping. And it had a lot of, a really wide variety of SKUs, a really wide variety of vendors. And I like that how spread out the revenue mix was. I think at that time, no item and no brand had more than 5 to 10% at most of the revenue. And I like that. And I also liked the niche. I think it's high growth. There are a lot of macroeconomic trends in favor of it. So it made sense to buy it.
Yeah, that's actually tees me up perfectly for my next question. So why did you choose this niche?
I think there are a lot of very good macroeconomic trends and cultural trends behind the pet niche. It's pretty amazing if you look at trends like people having kids later and therefore having more pets more often and investing more in their pets. I think it's pretty remarkable to be in that. Additionally, because we also cater to pet professionals like groomers, veterinarians, pet shelters, and let's say the whole ecosystem of pet care. There are more of those businesses, and these people also are investing more in those businesses, and therefore they're more likely to buy from us or buy more from us. So all of those trends, I think, really help. And also being diversified, I think, because when you say pets, we don't sell a lot of items that are lower value. So in selling to the niche of pets, we sell both to, let's say, the B2B pet professional niche, as well as to really picky individual owners of pets. And being diversified in both sectors of this niche, I thought they were just really good diversification to get behind, and it's worked out.
Excellent answer. How does this primarily make money, this business?
It's a traditional dropshipping model. So somebody comes on the store, they buy something for $10. I turn around and buy it from the vendor for $8, and the vendor drop ships it straight to the customer that bought it from me. Naturally, the average order value, and that was just an example, the average order value right now is somewhere between $500 and $800. So the items are, I'd say, they're pretty significant purchases most of the time. So it's good because it means that you're not handling a lot of small impulse buys. The order volume can remain relatively low. In a normal month, we do about 150 to 200. But, it's in a pretty high price. So that's why I think it's a good idea.
Excellent. I know you mentioned this earlier, so, feel free if you don't want to expand upon it or if you do. But, why are you selling the business instead of keeping it and growing it?
Sure. So my original idea was to have a portfolio of businesses, and I started down that path and then recruited away for a few other opportunities that I don't think I'll be able to say no to. So I just think to be responsible to my shareholders and investors, I should not be running this totally passively off the side of my desk. I want to be able to divest now while I still have time before I start work on other projects and return money to shareholders and to make some money myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations on the new opportunities as well. In terms of business history, is there anything you learned from this business that you'll apply to future sites or businesses? What did you learn from building this that just worked?
A few things. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that very often previous owners don't see because you're too close to it. So a fresh set of eyes when you come in really helps on things like design, user experience, on gaps in your vendors or gaps in the products you sell. I also think that the fresh set of eye helps on things like, I don't know, you might have people that you work with that are experts in areas the previous owner didn't know. So, for example, I brought in SEO consultants, I brought in new PPC agencies. Every time you do that, somebody is able to add value to the business because they're not used to it and they're looking at it, like I said, with a fresh set of eyes. That was an important skill. Secondly, just it's important to be critical. When you buy a business, especially, there's an instinct, I think, to believe that, if it's working for a really good reason, which is great, but you should also be critical. And there are things that could be working better that you need to be critical about and aggressively tackle to improve. Those were two very big learnings for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really great answer. And I'm sure you're going to have a pretty good insight on this next one. We always try to find, sort of talk about both sides of the coin. So what have you tried that, say, didn't work while you were building this business?
I did a reskin of the site using a one example, and I think it's paradigmatic of a lot of other things. I did a reskin of the site, for example, when I came in, and conversion rate didn't improve that much. So, this was a significant-ish investment for not a lot of upside. And, I was wrong on that one. Another example of something that didn't work, I was pretty confident that I could scale PPC massively right out of the gate. And, I could scale some, but definitely not as much as I thought I could. So that was a really important learning. I had to explore other channels to drive growth besides just throwing more money at digital advertising. And, those are examples of things that didn't work or only worked a little bit. Other things that definitely worked, I think improving the quality of customer service, throwing more time at it to make sure that I had really good employees or consultants doing that. That was really helpful. Improving copy. We noticed where we invested time and effort and sometimes money in improving copy. That really helped. Improving navigation. Again, these things, like I mentioned earlier, that a critical fresh set of eyes can identify. I think that's where the biggest growth came from for us. Also adding new products that you almost think that it shouldn't work, and yet you add it and suddenly you're selling it. That was a really good learning and things that worked as well.
Yeah, I really like how you painted a picture of that. I actually think that's a really great lead in when we're talking about opportunities here. If you were to keep the business, what are some ways you would try to grow it?
I think CRO, conversion rate optimization, is infinite. There's just no reason to stop it, right? Because it's a scientific approach. You A/B test things, and if it doesn't work, you stop it and try something else. And if it works, you roll it out and keep building upon that. I think there's a lot of room to grow there. If a buyer either has that expertise or invest the money in an agency that can do that on their behalf, I think that's a no-brainer. It's something that's worked for us and I'll continue to do. Another one is SEO. The previous owner did a pretty decent SEO push, but that was a while back. So I think it's something that should be consistently refreshed, especially as Google continues to roll out algorithm updates. You got to stay one step ahead of that. Adding new content, improving existing content, refreshing it, making sure that you're ranking for the right keywords, the blocking and tackling of SEO. I think that's definitely something to explore. Something I didn't do, I didn't have the time to explore a lot, email marketing. We have close to 10,000 people in our email list, and it continues to grow. And it's just not something that I try to monetize aggressively. I think so I changed email platforms into Klaviyo, which I think was a good move. The design and the metrics are easier to understand. The flows are easier to build, but throwing effort behind that, email, newsletters, promotions via email at a more regular cadence, I think that's a really big opportunity. Social media, I think it's something that I underloved a little bit. I put some effort into it, but I think a professional agency, we actually just hired one now, but a professional agency that can really scale that up, not necessarily in paid ads, that's possible too, but building community, pet care, and especially professional or picky owners with pet care. That's a meaningful niche that people invest a lot of emotion into. I think it's more could be done there by a new owner. But those are a lot of main ones, but there are also so many small ones. You can continue to improve copy. I think you can try new paid advertising channels. For example, we haven't done a lot of paid ads in social media, like I mentioned. We have not explored a lot of retargeting at scale. Affiliates, I think, is another thing. So it's infinite if you think about it. They're either things that I, as an owner, didn't do a lot of, and the new owner could definitely throw money and effort behind that to grow the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great to be able to go through all that and just show all the different ways that a buyer could grow and take what you've done and take it to the next level. So it's great. In terms of traffic and earnings, so where does the majority of your traffic come from?
I haven't looked at this in a while, and I think this is through Empire Flipper. Obviously, the potential buyers would have access to GA to confirm. I think it's about 50% paid, maybe 30 or 35% organic, and the rest is direct or social and email. The revenue tends to fall more or less along those lines as well. Maybe a little bit skewed more towards Google or towards PPC because of Google Shopping, which is natural for a dropship e-commerce business. But those are more or less the breakdown.
Yeah. And what do you currently do in terms of marketing?
So Google ads and Bing ads, mainly in shopping. We do think, I probably should not reveal the amount we spend, but we do a fair amount there, and it drives, like I said, at least half or more of the revenue with lots of opportunities to scale there. I think a lot of our effort as well, you could call it marketing, but CRO. So consistently improving conversion rate, testing, have an agency that does that. I think it's absolute gold because, like I mentioned earlier, it's scientific. You can just keep doing it and keep improving. Another thing that we're beginning to invest in is social media. So putting more effort into building a following, especially on Instagram, but also on Facebook. I think just it's too essential to ignore, and we're beginning to do that. The new owner would inherit all the relationships with the agencies doing it, as well as obviously the pages. Another one that we're doing more of is just more regularly reaching out to larger potential clients. So if you think about, especially on the B2B side, so the ability of for us to, through our customer service and sales teams, for them to reach out and talk to somebody that, for example, owns multiple groomers. That's sales/marketing, but identifying that new vendors is also, in a way, it's marketing because you have to sell yourself as a potential reseller. We're doing a lot of that. And there are a bunch of, I'd say, long tail marketing initiatives that I would recommend the new owner continue to do. But the opportunities are infinite. If you think about the online space today, and there's so many things that I don't even know about that other buyers have expertise on that they could explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to jump back into, we're talking about opportunities there. So again, we always try to get the flip side and the other side of the story. So what do you think are the biggest risks with this business that a buyer should be aware of?
Sure. I think the largest risk is things that out of your control. And there's obviously execution risk, but that's within your control. But risks that you don't think about often that I learned. So for example, a supplier can decide to not sell through dropshippers anymore. We recently had one of those. Again, we counter that by being really well diversified in your supply, but that's always a risk. You also have potential copycats out there. We had an issue, right? And you have to file DMCA violations against them, and Shopify is generally pretty helpful. But people just looking at your site and saying, yeah, we can just start one of our own with similar sellers or similar products. Other risks, Google can always change its algorithm. Like I mentioned earlier, we probably do about maybe 30% of our traffic through organic. Most of that is Google. And, if overnight Google does an algorithm change that drops your traffic, I think it's always a risk. I recently actually had that on an affiliate site that I own. It's always something to be aware of. You got to counter that with really good content and more SEO efforts. Also, pricing changes can also affect you. So, for example, your margins can drop because either a competitor wants to price lower than you, or a supplier will increase their price, and that can squeeze your margins if you're not careful or if you don't price accordingly and pass that on to the customer. Another one that is meaningful is in Google Shopping. if you don't have an agency, and I obviously don't do it myself, but if your agency is not very good at managing your feed, there are risks such as sub-optimizing your feed that can really hurt you if suddenly you stop showing up for one of your SKUs, and competitors, or especially big competitors like Wayfair or Amazon, Chewy, anybody that's big in your space can suddenly start taking sales that you're not aware that they're taking sales until you catch up to it. I think they're all pretty standard e-commerce risks, drop shipping company risks. Either somebody that has good agencies they would not be totally at the mercy of fate on that one, or an experienced e-commerce operator would know these things ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. So moving on to work required for the business, can you describe the amount and type of work you do on the business for maintenance?
Sure. Like I mentioned earlier, I own another business and I also do consulting, and I manage the fund and portfolio that owns this business. So definitely this business does not require full-time effort. Also because I put in, I think, a really good full-time operations manager, and I've outsourced to pretty qualified agencies. The way I describe it is that I quarterback all of these people, agencies, freelancers, the ops manager, customer service, etc. So it's important to stay connected, but the amount of hours is relatively low. I'd say in a normal week, somewhere between 5 and 15 hours. So it's called that a 10-hour average. And that also, by the way, depends on how aggressively you want to grow and expand the business or what's happening. So for example, when we did a repricing push, that required a lot more effort. So I definitely went beyond 10 hours there, looking at individual SKUs, individual brands, making sure that we're priced properly, looking at cost of goods sold across channels. That required more effort. When I had to change agencies and I had to RFP a bunch of different PPC agencies, that definitely required a lot more effort. That's the type of thing that will take you above 10 hours. There are also weeks where all I'm doing is managing cash flow, seeing the money come in the bank, paying off vendors, managing credit cards, talking to my accountant, talking to their agencies. That can be a week that's easily 5 hours a week if you manage it properly. The main lines of work, I think, are staying in touch with the operations manager, monitoring cash flow, monitoring cost of goods sold, talking to agencies like the social media agency, the PPC agency, occasionally doing strategy work. Like I'll look at competitors, look at new items that I see coming out of the market, Googling around to see if anybody's ranking higher than us, that type of work. I think also if you want to grow the business, especially, a meaningful amount of work can be outsourced to, and I learned this, I think was a good insight, to interns. So right now we have 5 different interns of all the way ranging from college age to MBAs at Ivy League schools. And it's really rewarding because you say, look, tell me, for example, lines of business I should expand here or what verticals. And, a really nice answer comes back. And that helped take that load off of me in managing strategy. So it really, I think, depends on how much you want to put into it, but 5 to 15 hours a week, depending on your aggressiveness, I think, in managing.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you go through that. It sounds like I know you had a background that I think informed your ability to be able to, come in and run this business. I think it's worth kind of going over, what skills or requirements there might be for someone not familiar with the niche or business model to be able to come in and start running this business.
Yeah. If you have a background in anything marketing related, if you have a background in anything pet related, if you have a background in anything internet, e-business related, all of those are helpful, but I would also say not required. I think this dropshipping lifestyle, let's say that came out in the past 5-10 years, part of what I think is brilliant about it is that you really can teach anyone to do it. The more attuned you are, I think, to internet marketing or to the pet niche or to managing, put it this way, if you've managed a real store, you probably knew more about how to manage this business than I did out of the gate, because I'd never managed dropshipping before and I never managed retailers or e-tailers before. The dynamics are the same, it just happens to be online. So I think skills that are good to have, everything I'm going to list is a good or a nice to have, but not essential. Again, internet marketing, understanding the dynamics of advertising online, skills in managing, let's say, a store so you understand vendor payment terms and managing your cost of goods sold and margins per order. Those types of things are nice to have, but it's not anything that you can't manage on a good Excel file. Other skills that I think are really good to have If you have grown any kind of e-commerce store before or e-business, let's say, so you understand the dynamics of driving traffic and conversion, those are really good to have, but none of those are essential. Like I said, so many people are leaving jobs that have nothing to do with this and starting or buying e-commerce, Shopify, dropshipping businesses and being really successful. The previous owner that built it, for example, was a finance consultant, had no real experience in internet, and he built this to a pretty sizable business, and I acquired it from him. So I think it really does matter your ability to learn, but none of these are essential skills. If I had to pick one, I would say that the best skill to have, I think, is just overall management ability in business sense. So, you can manage this by just looking at a P&L and understanding where the problems and opportunities are. And that's really high level. You don't need any kind of niche expertise to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's good for you to kind of point out to our listeners that, the information is there to be able to learn the skills to be able to, run a drop shipping business. I think it's a great point to be making. These are my last few questions for you, just a few bits of additional information. So how much support are you offering buyers?
I'd say I can be very flexible on that as much as they need. I think the main thing for me would be once there's a sale, to just agree what that support looks like. So for example, the frequency of phone calls, the length, if we're meeting in person, any of those things. I'm very flexible to provide as much as is needed. I was also especially for first-time buyers, which I know can be scary. I was also a first-time buyer a year ago when I acquired this business. So I think it's totally reasonable for somebody to ask for more. And as long as we agree it on paper, I'm totally willing to provide as much as is needed. And the type of help, video calls, phone calls, text, SMS, carrier pigeon, I think it really depends on whatever the buyer needs. Like I said, I'm very flexible.
I have you committed now to a carrier pigeon, so you might have to expect that. No, I'm just kidding. All right, would you commit to a non-compete?
Oh, absolutely. No question.
Are you open to negotiating something like an earn-out?
Yeah, as usual. It totally depends on the percentage, the amount, and the terms, the length, but I don't think that would be a problem. But again, it's the better and more beneficial the offer to the seller, the more seriously I am to take it. So it really depends on what offers come in.
And this might be my final question, but it is one of my favorite ones. Putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why do you think this is a business worth buying?
I think the macroeconomics behind the pet niche, as well as the cultural trends behind the pet niche, are really, really solid. And don't take my word for it. I think a potential buyer can go and research this and confirm. On top of that, the solidness of the store itself, the breadth of product offerings, relationships with vendors. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of vendors. The variety of SKUs, I think it means that you're not, it's not a drop shipping store where if you lose one of your items or if you get competition taking over one of your items, suddenly you lost everything. I mean, this is really well diversified across lots of brands and lots of SKUs. I think also as far as the drop shipping model goes, because I do have all sorts of people in place, this can be very hands-off. It gives you time, I think, to learn if you haven't done drop shipping before. And if you have, I think having so much solidity in place allows you to really apply your expertise without doing a lot of the grunt work that is sometimes required in things like customer service or order management or building systems or apps that manage the store. So I think it's buying into something that is already pretty stable and really well diversified with a strong set of trends behind it. And also with a seller that is willing to help you with whatever help you need. I can be very flexible on that. And, people can look at my background and see that hopefully it's help worth having. And I'm committed to making sure the next owner is really successful.
That's a great answer. Well, Nicholas, this has been an excellent interview. Before I close out, is there anything else you'd like to share that I might have missed?
No, I think you covered everything. And I'd invite any potential buyer to schedule a call if they have any questions. Absolutely no reason not to at least get on the phone and discuss. I can be pretty flexible on a lot of terms. So if there's any deal potentially worth making, I think it's worth getting on the phone and talking.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today. Really looking forward to seeing how this plays out for you. And just really appreciate you talking to me.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And if you want more information, the link will be below the video that'll take you to this marketplace listing. If you're watching this on the listing page and want more information, become a depositor today. When you make the deposit, one of our business analysts will be in contact with you and you'll be given everything you need to review this business. Have a great day.